Hi everyone, welcome to another video about New Zealand immigration. I'm David, I'm a New Zealand immigration lawyer, and this video is about the Active Investor Plus investment category visa options for New Zealand. Specifically today in this video, we're talking about what we call the balanced category or the balanced approach to investment in New Zealand. There are two main categories under the Active Investor Plus. One is called growth and one is called balanced. They are having slightly different requirements. I've done an earlier video on the growth category, so go and watch that if you've got time. But I'll cover the main points, generally speaking, about investment in this video as well. Okay, so first of all, what is the investor category? Okay, it's fundamentally a process by which you can obtain your residence in New Zealand by way of investment. As I've said before in many other videos, it's not a buying a citizenship or buying a passport approach. I'm aware there are some countries where you will give the government some money and they will give you a passport. New Zealand doesn't offer that. What New Zealand says is that if you are a person of substantial fortune, you have reasonable wealth and abilities, then of course you can come to New Zealand, invest your money for a period of time, and at the end of that period you can take your money back. Now, the fundamental principle is that you have to have genuine funds that are lawfully obtained. Okay, that's your money that you have earned or you have come about through lawful means, and we have to be able to prove that by way of documentation, your tax returns, your property ownership, the last will and testament of your mother or father who left you money, etc., etc. We need to substantially show where you got your money from and that it's lawful. And then, of course, you have to be prepared to invest that in New Zealand into specific types of investments. Now, as with the earlier video, I explained that there are two types of investments or two main categories. The first one is the growth category with $5 million invested over a period of 3 years, staying in New Zealand 21 days. In this video, we're talking about now the balanced category. So what is the main difference? The main difference is you're now going to be investing 10 million instead of 5 million. So 10 million New Zealand dollars, roughly 6 million US dollars. And that $10 million will need to be invested. And the second main difference is it can be invested in what we call balanced investments. So whereas the growth category is managed funds and direct investments into companies, the balanced category allows you to invest into government bonds, corporate bonds, or local authorities. You can invest in listed equities, so the stock market, the New Zealand Stock Exchange. You can even do philanthropy to a degree. Managed funds can be included as well, but also very, very low risk kind of corporate or government investment, even potentially residential property development and certain types of development, which is adding to New Zealand's housing stock, commercial and industrial property. Essentially, by going into the balanced category, you are just opening up the type of investment that you can go into. And this is really more like the old settings of the investor categories that leaves the choice of investment to you, and then it leaves the job of proving that it's an acceptable investment to us as your advisor or your accountant. Whereas with the growth category, the investments must be approved by New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. With the balanced category, it's really just a matter of the instruction on the immigration policy satisfying that it's an acceptable investment. So in other words, you have more options and potentially also perceived much lower risk. And because a government bond, let's be honest, is going to be a much lower risk proposition than a corporate investment. Now, what are the other main differences for the balanced category versus the growth category? The other main difference is how much time you have to invest the money. So you're investing more money and you're investing it for longer. So the required period of time is 5 years. And during that 5 years, you have to stay in New Zealand for 105 days. So roughly 20 days, let's say 3 weeks per year for 5 years, 21 days per year. So whereas with the growth category, it's 1 week per year for 3 years, with the balanced category, essentially it's 3 weeks a year for 5 years. It's not so bad. New Zealand's a wonderful country. You can come and stay for a few weeks. It'll go by quickly. Now, additional to that, there is an opportunity to reduce the amount of time you have to stay in New Zealand. And this is a progressive reduction with more investment. So you invest $1 million more, you can have a reduction of a certain amount, invest another $1 million, a reduction of a certain amount, up to an additional 3 million. But that 3 million additionally has to be invested not in the balanced category of investments. It has to be invested over here in the growth category. So just to summarize, to reduce the amount of time spent in New Zealand over the 5 years, you can invest an additional $1, $2, or $3 million in the growth category investments. You put your 10 million on government bonds, and then maybe 3 million you go into some acceptable managed funds, and you reduce the amount of time you stay. This is something that you'd want to discuss very personally and deeply with your advisor, lawyer, whoever is assisting you with the application, because you don't want to get it wrong. You want to make sure you get it right. Now, another thing to note is that we've talked about in the earlier video the growth, and in this video the balanced category. One thing to note is that you have a choice between the two. If you could satisfy one or the other, but you're not sure which one to go for, you can lodge your application based on one. And then after you've been approved in principle, and during the period of time that you have of 6 months to invest your money, you can change your mind. You're allowed to change your mind at least once. You can't change your mind once and then change it back, only once. So we recommend that if you are in the level of wealth where you have the ability to potentially invest 10 million, what we would recommend is that you nominate $10 million worth of funds and assets in your application. And then, of course, during the process of applying and getting to know the landscape of New Zealand's investment environment, you can change your mind. If you don't want to do that later on, you can reduce the amount. In fact, many of our clients are considering, even right up to the last minute, which category they'd like to go into. So yeah, that's really the main point about the balanced category. And as I said in the earlier video, we've covered other factors of the investment category altogether. So go and have a look at that video as well. We'll make some more videos as time goes by, as we see updates on what's coming through with the investment. I suppose if I think about it, what else could I say? I could give you some warnings about possible pitfalls. Everybody makes these videos and talks about all the hints and tips about how to be approved, but what about the warnings of the pitfalls? Well, there are a couple of things I think you should be careful about when investing in New Zealand. Right? New Zealand is a small country at the bottom of the world, 5 million people, and New Zealanders are very proud about punching above their weight and being a strong economy, etc., etc. However, this is not the New York Stock Exchange, right? It's not even equivalent of our neighbours in Australia, Sydney, Melbourne. The level of commerce and activity in New Zealand is just lower than other parts of the world. And so if you're coming from a large economy, the United States of America, London, Hong Kong, China, then you might be used to an investment environment of a certain type. And then here we come to New Zealand, it's a totally different environment. So one common pitfall, and one thing that we always advise to look out for is what are you actually investing in? Really do your own research. Really try to find out what's going on in New Zealand. What is New Zealand like as a country? What is the investment environment like? And you might find that it's quite different. Terminology is different. I suppose the other thing to watch out for, specifically related to this policy, is that some investments that you go into might not be very liquid. Government bonds, highly liquid. Obviously, banking bonds, all these things, very liquid. But if you go into the growth category and choose a managed venture capital fund, you might put your money in and you think that at the end of 3 years you can take this out. But once the investment period comes to an end, the investment itself may not have matured, because it's not a simple product, right? You're investing in a venture, and so there might be actually a protracted period required to bring your money out. These are just things to watch out for. We are wondering, as in our office, we start wondering, what happens when the very first managed fund falls over and no one gets their money back? Well, who will we go to then? Because these are government approved, but they're not government guaranteed. Okay, so it's not the case that you can invest this money and say, oh, the New Zealand government guarantees this. If it fails, I'll get my money back. It's not the case. But then again, I'm assuming that this video is targeting people of a certain level of understanding about investment, right? If you're a wholesale investor, if you're an educated investor, you probably know better than we do about the risks. Okay, so as usual, my advice is to get advice, and and also as usual, good luck with your immigration process, and ka kite anō.